Then we decided to go a little bit upmarket with the series, and so next I did Sex Lives of the Great Artists, largely for my own pleasure. What we learned in the book, of course, is that many young men became artists simply to get young women to take their clothes off, or in some cases other young men to take their clothes off. But that's basically what art's all about. And there's some wonderful stories. I'm particularly fond of Gauguin, largely because, like him, I like dusky young women. People forget that he was quite old when he became an artist. He was just turning 40. First of all, he went to Martinique, where he wrote home to his rather frigid Danish wife that you had to be very careful eating the fruit there, because the young women rob the fruit on themselves and hand it for you to eat, and if you eat it, you're captivated by it, you're bewitched by them forever. Again, it works for me. When he first went to the South Seas, to Tahiti, he was wandering around the island, and he stopped for lunch in a village, and an old woman was cooking the food for him, and she said to him, "Monsieur, you need a wife. You're alone, and I have a young niece." And he asked her 3 questions. Was she young? Was she healthy? Was she pretty? And the answer to all 3 questions was yes, she was. So after lunch, he said, "Bring the woman, the girl, to me." And he said the girl came, a beautiful girl, in a sheer pink frock, and you could see her lovely brown nipples through the frock. And she sat down next to him, and he asked her 3 questions. "Have you ever been ill?" he asked. She said, "No." "Are you afraid of me?" She said, "No." She said, "Would you like to come live with me?" She said yes, and she went to live with him for a time. He had to go back to Paris at one time. When he came back to the South Seas, she had married a guy, but came back to live with him. Years after he died, his first biographer found this woman and asked what it was like, what Mr. Gauguin was like, and she said, "Well, life with him was never dull." I always liked Picasso was a very virile man, always chasing women, several lovers at a time. And when he was painting the great pacifist icon Guernica, 2 of his mistresses, he encouraged them to actually to fight while he was painting it. Gauguin, of course, stayed with Van Gogh in Arles, the yellow house there, and this is where Van Gogh cut off his ear, and the reason was Gauguin had taken the prostitute that he particularly fancied, and he cut the ear off to give, the lobe of the ear at least, to give to the prostitute. And another wonderful story I came out of I got from Sex Lives of the Great Artists was, of course, the story of Leonardo da Vinci, who everybody assumes is gay, but there's no reason to think he was at all. In fact, if you look at his paintings, he's very fond of breasts, particularly. He even does breast-shaped hills in the background. And I discovered why the Mona Lisa was smiling, because he painted 2 paintings. And I defy you to find any book about Leonardo da Vinci or the Mona Lisa that doesn't say he painted 2 paintings, 1 clothed and 1 naked. This May, I found out who the model was. So it was a prostitute who stayed with him for 11 years. And he said, I am the disciple of experience, so I think he must have experienced her. And this may explain why the Mona Lisa is smiling. Then I did Sex Life of Great Composers, and where I discovered that actually music is essentially bottled sex. A lot of the great composers had very prolific sex lives, and there were groupies long before rock and roll started. Women went crazy about Liszt, for example. I discovered why Mozart was buried in a pauper's grave. The reason was that he was shagging the wife of his patron, I found out who Beethoven's immortal beloved was, that's puzzled scholars for centuries. It was, of course, his brother's wife. And there's the wonderful stories of Chopin is one of my favourite, with especially his famous Minute Waltz, which is the waltz in D flat major, which in Polish is Das Durka, and he also which also means a dark D, which he referred to his mistress's sexual areas appropriately, and he complains in his love letters to various mistresses that he's spent many of his great compositions, his great symphonies, inside them. These were his great nocturnal emissions. Having done Sex Life of the Great Composers and Sex Life of the Great Artists, of course, I wanted to do Sex Life of the Great Writers, but then should I include myself? But maybe my sex life is just a work in progress.
So next we went to Hollywood with Sex Lives of the Hollywood Idols, about the great stars of the 1930s and the golden days of Hollywood. Of course, we have Charlie Chaplin, who couldn't keep his hands off underage girls. There's the great Errol Flynn, of course. We have Cary Grant, the great heartthrob, who, although women loved him, actually lived openly with Randolph Scott. And there's James Dean, the human ashtray, who liked people stubbing cigarettes out on him for some reason. But my favourite is the great John Barrymore, who's one of those great swashbuckling characters, which in fact Errol Flynn based his whole act on. Barrymore had been alcoholic since the age of 9 and went into acting because he didn't really like working very much. He famously was in San Francisco during the earthquake there, and emerged from the ruins of his hotel in an immaculate dressing gown, brushing his lapel, saying, "Terrible night, dear boy." In his 40s, he married a teenage woman who was determined to reform him. And when they went on the honeymoon on his yacht, she threw all the liquor overboard. Within a couple of days, he was reduced to drinking her perfume and siphoning fluids out of the engine to drink. He went completely paranoid. He imagined that she was going to have him put in a mental hospital and take all his money. So when they arrived in San Francisco, he leapt onto the jetty, jumped on a train, went to New York, got a steamer over to London, went to London Films, where he told the great producer there, Alexander Korda, that he would make a movie of Hamlet for him. Hamlet was Barrymore's great stage role. Anyway, he got $25,000 in his pocket for the movie. First day of shooting, he couldn't remember a single word. So he said, what I need is I need to go to the Far East to see Krishnamurti, the great guru then for spiritual healing and enlightenment. So off he jumped on another ship, off he went, arrived in India. The first person he met when he set foot in India was a pimp who said he took him to this fantastic brothel, which had marble pillars and silk hangings. He gave the $25,000 to the man to close the brothel for a month so he could have services all the girls. He said he just lay there surrounded by cushions for a month and let the girls minister to him. And he said, I returned to Hollywood entirely restored.